Hey, everybody. Welcome to a very quick podcast, probably just like 15, 20 minutes. Thank you to everybody who joined live. Make sure to like the video. It'll help spread it to other people who hopefully enjoy this type of work from myself and Esfandiar Baraheni, who joins me. Very lucky to be joined by an esteemed guest such as yourself. We're
What up, Doc?
talking Brandon Ingram, dude.
Yeah.
We have a report from Shams. We have a 3-year, $120 million contract extension with the Raptors and Brandon Ingram. This includes a player option in 2027-28. Okay. And also for anybody who wanted to know, for the agent watchers out there, this deal was negotiated by sports CEO Rich Paul. That's clutch, baby. And Shai Say and Mike George and Bobby Marks and all these people talking. Brandon is making some money.
Yeah.
We'll swing it to you. This was the contract that you pitched.
Yeah.
This was your prediction.
Honestly, I think it was on this show when we were talking about it. I'm like, look, like a 3-year 120 deal makes sense. The player option is sort of like a Raptors specialty at this point. They did it with Gary Trent Jr. They did not do it with Emmanuel Quickly, if I remember correctly, but they typically have done it for most of the players that they like pre-agency vibe with, where they trade for them and then try to re-sign them. Jakob Poeltl here, Jakob Poeltl is one version too. So like generally, this is the way the Raptors like to move. And so I think from the player option perspective, it makes sense. 40 million M's for Brandon Ingram. We can talk about like value and how that works. My biggest question, by the way, and Nesta just dropped the 38.1, 40, 41.9. I believe that's what Blake has suggested could be the structure of the
Nesta
contract.
is so good at giving info during these streams. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Nesta.
Shout out to Nesta. And so, look, if it's like that, where it's escalating, the contract is escalating, it clearly gives the Raptors more wiggle room this summer to work around, especially if they are getting a top pick. I just tweeted this, but like rookie scale salaries, if they get the number one pick, according to Real GM, is $11.5 million. Okay. That goes all the way down. If they get the 10th pick, it's $5 million. So it's a pretty big difference there. It's like $6 million in difference based on whatever pick they end up getting. But I think generally locking down a player the talent of Brandon Ingram for not the max he could have got, because the max was 3 years, $144 million, which is about $48 million a year. And doing it in a way where like you got this contract extension 3 days after he got traded. Obviously, there's the whole back end negotiations.
That doesn't happen. That's not a thing.
But I don't hate this deal at all. And I think, one of the main questions I had about the whole Ingram trade was like what the contract would look like. I no longer have that question. I think this was a fair deal, makes sense for the Raptors, and like it just works for both sides. Win-win, in my opinion.
Yeah. I've been going through a bunch of the Ingram like film from the Pelicans so that I can do a video essay on what the Raptors can steal from New Orleans and input in their offense now, and also where the overlap is. And it is kind of funny because I thought maybe we would be in limbo to discuss Brandon for some time because he's not going to play probably until March. And
maybe this trade actually makes it less likely that he plays also.
But also the tank, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Who knows? But regardless, I thought we were going to kind of be in limbo in how we could talk about Brandon, at least to some degree. But this extension coming so quick, let's just kind of like, okay, everyone can make their bones with the trade. Here's the thing. The Raptors haven't signed a super friendly contract in a really long time. Not since, you could argue, OG's extension.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And I didn't expect them to sign a super friendly contract this time around either. This isn't a super friendly contract.
No.
I was expecting Brandon to merit probably like 43 per year, but obviously the Raptors got lower than that because they offered the player option. If Brandon pops the hell off, then he'll be able to hit free agency at age 29, 30.
Yeah.
He can sell a team on 4 years, maybe, if he leaves the Raptors at that point in time, a max 4-year if he has great years. Nesta says Jameson battles a team-friendly deal. I don't think that qualifies. I like Jameson, but that's not bad. It's a little bit higher than what was rumored was offered from the Pelicans. And let's talk about the merits of it. I mean, Brandon Ingram is now with the Raptors, as far as we know. Could be 2 years, could be 3 years. Well, anybody could get traded, but you know the gist.
Team
40 million.
control for 3 years, basically.
Team
Well, 2 years.
control, quote
Yeah.
unquote. Yes.
Yeah.
Luka can get traded. Anybody can get traded.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
Except
Yeah.
Wemby, maybe. We have Brandon. What do you think of 38.1, 39 point, whatever? Like,
Yeah,
are
I
you
don't
okay?
I'm a fan. Like, look, Scotty, I'm looking at the cap sheet right now for the Raptors next year. I'm assuming that Scotty Barnes will not make All NBA or All Defense or win an MVP award or Defense Player of the Year
Probably
award this
not.
year. And so his contract will stay at that 25%, which means he's making $38.6 million next year. If it is Brandon Ingram making 38, you've got your two best players both making $38 million.
Wait, is that a
next year.
tidy piece of business that next year? Wait, that they have Scotty still
They're
technically
both
the highest paid?
He is technically still the highest paid player by like
Wow.
$500,000.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call politics. Whatever.
But I don't hate the contract structure at all. Again, I want to wait till it's confirmed. I know Nesta said that Blake dropped it, but I think Blake was more being suggestive of what the salary structure might look like versus reported. I don't know though. He usually he's
Well, wait,
Here,
you
we'll
go look up what
I'll
Blake said and I'll
sure.
yap.
I got you.
Because
Yeah.
Blake sometimes actually has the guys he can
For
text
sure. Absolutely. Yeah.
whoever is the person on. But regardless, Cole Halley says, who was going to pay Brandon Ingram? That's a good question. And this is what I talked about with Blake and Joe on the live stream that we did on Saturday, is that a lot of, there was 12 teams probably roughly that kind of threw their hat in the ring quickly to check in on Brandon Ingram's availability and then do that pre-agency talk and kind of gauge, like, do we want this guy on the team? Is the juice worth the squeeze? And teams like Atlanta and Miami were closer than a lot of the other teams that it was a quick phone call. The Raptors obviously became the one that won it most.
Yeah.
The truth is the Raptors weren't competing against a large or long list of teams for Brandon Ingram. However, the status of teams around the league, his free agency, it could shift. And that's where it could get different because things move fast in this league. As it currently stands, the Raptors would have had to, the Nets would have been the team that
Brooklyn
could
would have been
pluck
a
him.
team. Washington probably would have been a team, although they just took on contracts too. So, yeah.
And that's not super competitive with, you'd probably pick the Raptors over both those teams if I'm from the outside view. However, things can shift quite quickly and a team could move and suddenly become a viable option for Brandon Ingram. And with the Raptors signing the extension, it keeps the amount potentially lower, probably not in actuality, but there's a security that comes with that. And also it keeps the term not as long. And the Raptors are probably more comfortable signing Ingram till 29 guaranteed, potentially 30, rather than they are signing until 31. Now, of course, you can make of that what you will, but the Raptors probably weren't in deep competition, but go ahead.
I don't know. I don't think so. And I think, like, given there seems to be some conversation when they traded for BI that, like, he wanted to come here. He wanted to embrace this level of challenge. And I think that's probably partially like narrative on both sides. But ultimately, it comes down to like the money, right? And how much they're willing to pay and how much they were willing to commit to him. This deal also really helps out BI because if he outplays that value over the next 2 years, he can enter the free agency market at 29 years old and get another bag. And by the way, a long-term bag, 4 or 5 years.
29,
right.
perfect age.
Absolutely.
Perfect age to hit it. And I'll say quickly, since I haven't said it, I like this. I like this. You can quibble, and of course it would be nice. Like if the Raptors were like 33 and then it's ascending to like 38 over the next 3 years. That's awesome, dude. But that's not always the case. The Raptors haven't won a contract recently. Well, not in a long time, quite frankly. But like, I like Brandon Ingram's game a lot. I enjoy watching him play. You and I have talked about the merits of how he'll impact the team. And, we've bandied about what that might look like. But we think it'll be good. So you pay a good player who could potentially be a great player, especially given the Raptors system, if they can encourage some efficiency changes, help Brandon get easier looks. Hey, man, totally fine with this. Totally happy with this.
So I sent you the Blake tweet, but I'll yell it out here. Blake said, structuring the deal as 38.1, 40, 41.9 player option makes the most sense to me of all available options, gives the Raptors a little extra breathing room in 2025 summer, and with the cap rising 10% and the 5% raises are tolerable. No incentives and bonuses in the deal, by the way. So it does seem like there's some reporting on that side. So
educated guessing, maybe. reading tea leaves, as it were.
I have a question for you, actually. So this is gonna pop up when people look at this extension. Between Quick, RJ, BI, So between those guys plus Scotty, they've committed $135 million to those four, which is look, I mean, that seems like a lot immediately. It is a lot, truthfully, for a team that's 16 and 30, almost 40, right? That being said, I think maybe there's more there. How do you feel about that? How do you feel about me giving you that number of like four guys committed to $140 million?
Well, I said that before this season. The Raptors were already an expensive team relative to their performance, and they're going to be, especially on its face, because Brandon isn't going to play a ton this season. This Raptors win-loss margin is going to look insane for their
cap sheet. Yeah,
it's going to be pretty gnarly. However, what we talked about, what I talked about, what in all of our coverage across different places, more for you, less for me. Mine is just here, but you and I have both been talking about how this is important because the Raptors can pivot if necessary, but there's more talent on the team. And once again, looking back at myself and Trey talking about the Raptors don't sign anybody anyways. Spend the money.
Yeah, that cap space doesn't matter. It's more about like, do you see them, because tax is a thing.
Somebody.
Right. Yeah. Who do you think it could squeeze? Because then they have Ochai, who's an RFA the summer after this one. Grady is also technically extension eligible in the summer of 2026. Jamal Shed is also extension eligible at that point. Jonathan Mobo is extension eligible. This is all next summer, not this summer coming up, the summer after that. But this is just stuff you got to think about eventually. RJ and Jakob are extension eligible this summer. Same with Ochai Agbaji, who's extension eligible this summer. Like, how do you feel about some of those guys potentially getting squeezed or not being a part of the long-term vision, so to speak? Do you think they will be? Actually, that's a better question.
I like when teams are in a prove it, like in the prove it thing.
Yeah.
I enjoy that better than, because again, as much as, and I've written and covered Ochai, he's had an awesome season, but the Raptors have to play better basketball so that these guys can prove that they're like worth
the money. Yeah.
And whether there are guys who can perform, we've watched many players across the NBA put up numbers on lesser teams. Get their numbers on lesser teams. The Raptors, and again, because they aren't in a position where RJ Barrett is on rookie scale, Emmanuel Quickley is on rookie scale. Like, these guys sign their extensions. They get paid a lot of money. Brandon, Scotty is he'll start his rookie scale max next season.
Next year,
But these guys have to prove on some level, like, they play important, good basketball, and that this isn't just getting numbers and low leverage minutes. And like a guy like Grady, for example, who I'm very high on, of course. You like a lot, of course.
Yeah.
He needs to have big gains throughout the rest of the season, throughout the summer. Year 3, if it's coming up, his last season before he becomes extension eligible, he has to be able to stick in a defense that makes sense.
Yeah, because he's probably getting squeezed out of a starting spot also next year if they keep their exact same team.
Exactly. So it's like, hey man, iron sharpens iron. I like that. I know some people like the strip it all down, see what happens, hope you hit on a superstar, hope that you can align like what's happening with the Thunder to some degree. It's like Chet and J-Dub are both, they deserve max extensions, and Shea is an MVP, and that kind of stuff is all aligning perfectly. But even just the way that the cap is set up, their window is smaller than they initially thought it would be too.
For sure.
I like that the Raptors, there's potential that somebody gets squeezed. But hey, it's not up to me. It's not up to you.
It's up
to Masai and Bobby and those guys. It's like somebody gets squeezed.
Yeah.
That's basketball, man. That's if you want to be a good team, not everybody gets the roster spot. Not everybody gets to hang out and do it. I like the idea that there's pressure on these guys to perform, and there's pressure to play a better brand of basketball. Totally. We've watched not great basketball for a little while now. It's not as much as some people thought.
Right.
But starting next year, I like the idea that if somebody doesn't play well, they can get plucked out of the rotation. It's like, hey, you got to be better, man. Joseph Cassidy says Samson looks squeezable. I'm not making the
He's got
rotation,
he's got
dude.
the shoulders.
I'm
He's
not
got the
making the
shoulders.
rotation, man. I like when there's pressure on players to perform,
Yeah.
and there's a long history that winning basketball is better for development than just the malaise of like hardly anything going on in basketball.
Yeah.
There's a lot of history that says winning basketball is good for figuring out what player, like what does Kawhi Leonard's career look like if he's on the
Yeah, he's on
Hornets
on
instead
the
of the
Wizards or Hornets.
Spurs.
Yeah, right.
I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
This is an extreme example. I'm not trying to dunk this thing home,
Yeah.
but you understand that's how I feel. How do you feel about that?
I feel the same way. I just from like a numbers perspective, I'm kind of curious if, let's say, Jakob is extension eligible this summer. Let's say he wants to stay here long term and they renegotiate to give him less money yearly but more years, because obviously he's 31 now, heading into probably the next bag he's going to get. What if there's a world in which they renegotiate, because he has a $19.5 million player option for 2026 2027? He has next year also $19.5 million. What if instead of that they're like, all right, man, we will renegotiate, give you an extra 2 years or 3 years. And instead it's like, I don't know, 16, $17 million, right? And so the value AAV goes down, but you're actually getting more in terms of years. I don't think they'd be able to do that with RJ, because RJ is at a point in his career where he probably wants a bag and he's probably shooting for like a max level deal. But for Jakob, maybe that gives you a little bit more of a wiggle room if you can renegotiate to get him to take less money yearly. I don't know. How do you feel about that? I'm just throwing stuff out here. I'm looking at the cap sheet. I don't even know if that's a possibility. Like re-signing him, negotiating a different contract, and then doing it that way. By the way, I agree to your general point of like iron sharpens iron, getting these guys to be competitive. First and foremost, like the way their contracts are set up, I think that adds a level of pressure for this team to be competitive quicker than usual. They don't have that runway of we can figure this out, because typically teams that have that runway are guys on rookie scale contracts, are guys who are still figuring things out on their first contract. So when you have Scotty, you have Quick, you have RJ, and now BI, these are guys who are typically contractually in their let's try to win moments of their careers. And so I don't hate the fact that they've traded for BI. I don't hate the fact that they are in a position, salary cap wise, where they have to be competitive too. And to your point, it makes it so that these other guys on the margins, you either kind of sink or swim in this moment, crabs in a barrel type of thing, but in a basketball form where like Grady, Ochai, Jacoby, these guys who all sort of play on the wings in similar positions and can do different things at different certain moments of the game, right? There's like, I call them the Vision. I know you hate the Vision. It's not a good nickname. We'll workshop the Vision as a nickname. It's just
not many tanking team, underwhelming, low usage wing trios get a nickname, but I like that you tried it.
Thank you. If anybody has a suggestion in the comments, I'll let your boy. But those three have like a kind of, they're an archetype of a player that the Raptors are gearing towards for what this team can have. And so I'm curious to see how they kind of make it, like who out of those three ends up being the guy moving forward. But
I'll say on its face, we're watching chat. By the way, there's 650 people in here. You're listening. Make sure to hit the thumb on the video, like the video. It'll help push it to other people who hopefully enjoy this as well. But the chat is also basically, I think consensus is like RJ is the odd man out. Defense is being brought up.
Yeah.
I'll say this much. The Raptors' really good defensive lineups this season that perform really well have included RJ. And while I would never advocate for RJ to be a good defender, I don't think he is. I think that especially lately when the defense was better, he did a good job of existing within it without harming it. Now, could those defensive lineups go to the moon if there was perhaps somebody who was better than RJ? Yeah, but RJ wasn't tanking the defense, thankfully. And RJ has been giving you crazy numbers.
Yeah.
Actually, let me peel that back. Not crazy numbers, but RJ has been giving you production. And we've seen that when Scotty has to play without RJ, it hurts him a lot. Scotty over the past, however long, 15 games, is like 46% true shooting. He's shooting like 39% from the field as a
Yeah.
power forward, as a wing, right? They need offensive production from somewhere. And RJ isn't the sexiest name, and you're not going to be extremely happy about it. But the Raptors need production from somewhere, and we'll see what happens with RJ.
Yeah.
And RJ has done, I think, a really great job of stepping into that role for what this team needs. And when we look at what RJ did as a lower end option, when he was like 61, 62% true shooting, his cutting frequency went to the moon.
Yeah,
He
last
did
season, right?
he hit spot up threes, which he's not been that bad hitting spot up threes this year. His numbers are just tanked because he's taking too many pull-ups. We'll see how all this shakes out. But RJ, yes, I understand why people look at him as the first guy, because this team is loaded with wing talent and like-sized players that are closer to RJ. And the fact that, as I wrote, you can go to RaptorsRepublic.com, IQ has a singular skill set on this roster, the pull-up three. Nobody else does it. I understand why people don't look there, but this team could shake and move a lot of different ways. It could be RJ, but it doesn't necessarily have to be RJ. We'll see, man.
Yeah, it also is like the draft. Like the draft might be able to dictate, if they end up with the second pick and it's Dylan Harper, then that changes the equation for maybe potentially IQ. If it's Cooper Flagg, then your front court becomes super loaded and you don't know how to get minutes for all of these guys. If it's Ace Bailey, then that brings up a different conversation. And I don't know, like it really depends on where they land in the lottery and what direction they go, because VJ Edgecombe, also another name where it's like, how would he fit into this team given the kind of loaded wing player types that they have? So I think it really depends on what like May has for them, the lottery gods, as Bobby Webster said. Like, how does that end up unfolding for them? Because that will change the trajectory of this too. Also, have to keep in mind, like you said, I think someone in the comments just said it too, like Luka got traded, everybody is tradable. It's true.
Yeah, dude.
It's true. And like the Raptors now have, with Brandon Ingram, another talent, another player, and another salary slot, which they could use to eventually trade if they'd like to. It's around a $40 million salary spot that they can eventually do to try and chase a star if they want to. So to consider that too, if there's, I don't know, if a LaMelo Ball shows up or a Devin Booker shows up on the free market and the Raptors are super interested in buying low or going after those guys, you now have another player to potentially add to those deals if you'd like to, or you have other salaries in an RJ to kind of cobble up to try to make those deals too. It's like it gives you more flexibility to do stuff if you want to.
We like the Ingram trade.
Yeah.
And
totally.
because we are believing, not only is like you watch Ingram play, he leaps off the screen.
Absolutely.
He's incredibly talented. The length, the shot making, the ball handling ability, it's great. But like when I was just spamming watching all of his pick and roll possessions, I'm like, damn, this guy just won't go to the rim.
Yeah,
when you watch him off ball, he just won't cut. And it's like, well, when he does cut, he shoots like 80% at the rim.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
When he does get to the rim, he shoots like 70%. He has these elite numbers. And then he's going to a team that, and I said this on the last podcast with Joe and Blake, is like the Raptors are a team that takes shots in all the right places. And Brandon is a guy who takes shots in quote unquote all the wrong places, but still makes them. When he takes the right shot, he makes the right shot. And the Raptors are a team that takes the right shot and misses it.
Yeah.
Brandon just ups the shot making level by 100. And if they can get Brandon in stronger positions, as you said, if the Raptors want to keep building with Brandon, he's a great game. Of course, they can do that. But also, if they want to pivot and Brandon plays in this and like changes things about his game and becomes more efficient and fits into, probably a stronger defense with, Scotty and Jakob involved there. Like, they could be in a stronger position to pivot because Brandon might be viewed as a much better player after a year in Toronto than he is currently, where the Raptors were the team that took the chance on him. It could go a bunch of different ways. Before we get out here, maybe 5 minutes, let's talk about Brandon Ingram. We haven't talked that much about his game. We've talked about all the machinations around it, but let's talk about Brandon Ingram. There's probably new people listening. They haven't listened to all the latest Raptors Republic. So what's your sell on Brandon Ingram in Toronto?
You mentioned a lot of it just now. It does feel like there's some stuff left on the bone. Like there's more than
Yeah.
meets the eye when it comes to BI.
There's stuff left on the bone, more to meet the eye.
There
That's
you go.
crazy,
There
dude.
you go.
Wow.
But yeah, no, there's just more than what you see on the film and what you know of Brandon Ingram. Obviously, everybody knows that BI is this incredible mid-range savant, tough shot maker, tough shot taker. Just that's part of the game that everybody remembers when it comes to BI. But when it comes to like the other stuff you mentioned, maybe even if Darko Rajakovic is able to access like 15% more of it when it comes to the cutting, when it comes to the pull-up shooting, all of those aspects, the catch and shoot numbers are really good for him from 3 2. If he can just increase that by even 10 to 15%, I think the way that he looks for this Raptors team is much different. The other aspect is I'm really excited, and it seems like BI is very excited for this too, but for him to play with Jakob Poeltl, because the screening ability of Jakob is very similar, maybe not to the degree of, but probably pretty close to Steven Adams. And BI had some of his best years of his career playing alongside Steven Adams, the hard screen setter, creating space for him to get downhill, get to the mid-range area. Some of his best like rim frequency seasons. I think it was just the one season Steven Adams played for New Orleans, but that season itself was maybe his best rim frequency year. And you know, he's had JV, who is another guy who's like a good screen setter, but not to the level of Jakob, not to the level of Steven Adams, of guys who are just like gigantic, like dudes who can just lay guys out. And that helps a guy like BI. So it's cool that he has that self-awareness and knows like this is a guy who can directly help my game. And I think that's part of it that's intriguing to me. Also, I was watching the tape and it's like some of the numbers can be weird with BI. And I'm sure you noticed this too, where it's like Synergy says he has 30 cuts on the season. And then you look at the cuts and they're like, those aren't cuts. Those you know, so I'm kind of curious to see how it looks in Toronto's system where he actively will be forced to move around more often off the ball. And when it's Jakob or Scotty in those high post areas, or if they're running like flex, you know, those flex screens where it's getting BI downhill, or, you know, Scotty cutting to the basket, like how does that look with BI's length and size? I think that's intriguing for me. So
well, this is what I talked about before, was that, you know, obviously the Raptors, they had a really great run of offensive form before Pascal got traded, where he was running a lot of post up, and then Pascal would go on to have the most efficient play in the 2024 playoffs. His post up was more efficient than any other player doing anything, which is crazy. But when the Raptors started playing under Darko, Pascal's off ball screen frequency went up by 7 times. Wow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And Pascal went from being like an isolation player, he had more isolations than Luka Doncic total in the 2022 or 21-22 season. He had more than Luka. He had more than like Julius Randle. And so Pascal went from a player who was like an isolation player and then started this journey of being more of an off-ball guy in Toronto. And then obviously that calcified. He's not on ball that much in Indiana. That's a guy who later in his career took on that role and started it in Toronto, started moving off ball, more off ball screens, worked off ball more, tried to create more advantages elsewhere. Brandon, they're not super similar players. I know they both kill it in the mid range, but they are very different.
Yeah.
Ingram, there's so much talent there. Like God, is there ever talent there that if they can clean some stuff up, I think Nameless in chat said, you know, BI could score 28 points per game.
Yeah.
This Raptors team, I think, is a little bit too egalitarian for 28 points per game. However, a big jump in points per game would not surprise me for Brandon on this Raptors team. And it wouldn't surprise me to see his efficiency jump either. Like if he was at 25 and 6 immediately and doing it on like 59, 60% true shooting, that wouldn't surprise me at all.
His most ever is 24.7 in the 22-23 season. His most improved year, and then the year I was talking about with Steven Adams was 24.
He kind of plateaued.
So. Yeah, he's about 24 and 25. Yeah, that makes sense. Well, that's actually also part of like the shot diet thing that you mentioned, where it's like can't get to 28, 30 points a game if you're not taking as many threes as you are twos type of thing. So
Nameless says probably the best scorer in Toronto since Leonard. Yeah. I think that's like Brandon Ingram is a better scorer than Pascal, I think. And he like Pascal's been a great player. He's hit a championship winning shot. He's made all NBA. He's an all-star this year. Has been uber efficient, all that kind of stuff. But I think as a scorer, Brandon outpaces him, and he's only 27. I mean, Pascal's been, chipping away to
Working
refine
on that,
his
man.
scoring.
Yeah.
He's 31 right away, I think. And I mean, dude, geez.
I'm excited, man. I think like you're coming away from this trade deadline a much better team, in a better position to either compete next year or be more flexible to be able to compete in the coming years. And if you're a Raptors fan, if you're kind of considering why would the Raptors do this BI trade, they've just added talent. They've now secured talent for the next 2-3 years, and they've done it in a way that they can kind of keep things open, their options open to whatever happens to this summer, next year, and so on and so forth. Just more talent, better ingredients, Papa John's,
He's not a pizza guy. He doesn't come from pizza. When I was looking at like Ingram's, and I'll say like a quick thing, I think if I get time to finish it, I didn't expect this to happen today. I was going to work on a video essay for tomorrow on Ingram.
Cool.
But I should have a lot of fun numbers because everyone loves numbers. I should have some really fun numbers and video for Brandon Ingram tomorrow that people can dream on. Also, Andre Ostapov sent $2. Thank you, Andre, for that.
Thank you.
Super sticker. I don't always know how the money works on YouTube, but much appreciated. And I feel like we've talked an extension for 30 minutes. Is there anything else on the table that if an interesting question comes up in chat, we can talk about it? But do you have anything else on the table? By the way, 740 people in here. Like the daggum video. It helps out a ton.
Yes, sir.
You're listening to two men talk. Hey, hopefully you like us. Give the thumbs up.
Yes.
Anything else on your mind regarding the Raptors?
No, I think actually, given the audience here, I think a lot of people have noticed my journey when it comes to Brandon Ingram. So I was very, very, I guess, skeptical initially. And then like you, as I've gone through and watched more tape and kind of reminded myself the type of player that Brandon Ingram is, gone through the numbers and looked at what he could contribute. And also now that the contract is secured and I kind of can see what the Raptors can work with moving forward, I really don't have any other concerns. Hopefully BI can stay healthy. I think that's the next step. It's seeing him have a healthy tenure with the Toronto Raptors, and that's obviously going to be a question. But generally, this whole process of me going from skeptical to now fully on board has just been like doing homework and realizing like sometimes you have this thing where you feel more skeptical about something. I don't know. Maybe you've had this in your analysis before too, where you're like, nah, this guy can't do this thing. And then you go through and you kind of prove yourself wrong through the video and through the numbers.
All the time. I'm not much of a takesman.
Right.
So
I let those fly. Yes, that's true.
I'm not as much of a takesman. And also the same way how like you could get some of the insider info if you listen to my podcast. I just don't make it a part of my brand. It'll be buried at minute 37 or something like that. Right. People like when I say something, it's not a tweet. It's usually just on the podcast or in the writing. But for example, like the first year when I was writing that, when I watched every Scotty possession and tracked and, put everything in there, I came out much higher on Scotty after that than when I went in, especially his scoring, his isolation scoring, which has not been good this year, but there was stuff that he was able to do in year one on weaker defenders that I was like, this impressed me a lot more than I expected. It's always a journey of discovering a player because how many players are in the league at one time, right? And you, especially you're part of one of, the world's most popular NBA podcasts, the Athletic Daily Podcast, with Dave DeFore. And, a big host of different people. Like you guys have so many different people coming in. However, how do you pay attention to the whole league? And I think the latest we saw in Brandon Ingram was injured, struggling through stuff, bad playoff series.
Yeah. And like the shot diet and all that. Like that's for sure.
And like an imperfect player for so many people. And if you're somebody who looks at true shooting and you're somebody who looks at EPM, some people scoff at that and just like walk away, just like, nope, not good enough, not interesting. But you watch Brandon Ingram's game and the tape is very interesting.
Yeah, the
And that's
Raptors just don't
why,
have a player like that. Also,
yeah,
Michael
go ahead.
Scotto just confirmed $38.1 million for the first year for Brandon Ingram. So
All right.
so it's a $42 million player option in 2027, 2028, no trade kicker, all that type of jazz. So basically, if you're not including the player option, that's like, I don't know.
It's fine.
It's a great deal. It's a good deal. You guys should be happy with this deal. I think it's a really, really good deal. Yeah.
I'm not yeah, Nesta says big up Blake.
Big up Blake.
Nameless says steal of a deal. I mean, yeah, that's totally it.
I think it's a good deal. Yeah.
But to the other point, it's like Brandon was a player who the last we'd seen of him on the big stage was not exactly his best.
Tough game.
But players don't always have their best.
Mhm.
When everybody called me like idiot, loser, moron, why would you like Garland more than Quickly last year? And I was like, well, I know Garland's game very well, and he was super injured. And then Garland immediately comes back and is like 63% true shooting. He is the orchestrator of one of the best offenses in the league and one of the best teams in the league, and he's an all-star, might end up being all NBA. It's like, yeah, the last thing you've seen from a player isn't always exactly who they are. And I feel strongly, in the same way that I really like Darius, I really like Brandon, and I feel quite strongly about his ability to perform better than what we've seen recently in Toronto. Of course, we can always be wrong. We talk a lot in this business. We're wrong in this business, but here it is. Brandon gets, and also from Brandon's point of view, has had an uncertain road this past little while.
Yeah.
Finds a team that wants him, signs a deal that he's happy with.
Totally.
That's also huge for performance too.
Actually,
they're humans, man.
I think that's a really important part of this, the human aspect of this, because BI, he's even mentioned like the 6-7 years he was in New Orleans, how much of a toll that was to kind of change teams, be in a different environment, be in a new environment. Coco just says growth isn't always linear. That's 100% true. And a guy who has been dealing with injuries throughout his career, ankle injuries, different knick-knack injuries throughout the years, coming to a newer environment, getting a new perspective, going to a team that wants you, that clearly is trading for you and wants to keep you a part of the long-term vision. That has to feel nice from the human perspective. And the fact that they got this deal done in 4 days or whatever, let's imagine they've been negotiating in the background, but for the most part, they've got this deal done in a short amount of time. That goes to show you that there's clearly a commitment from both sides to make this thing work. BI waiving his trade kicker when he got moved to Toronto.
Yeah,
also, another part where it's like he's clearly trying to make this thing work. So
I think that's an incredible expression of good faith too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what AD did when he went from the Pelicans to the Lakers.
And Dallas.
And vice versa. Yeah. There's also, we have a couple comments in chat about and this is an important thing to address, the perception of Brandon Ingram's relationship to weed. Nobody even knows, dude.
Yeah, nobody knows.
And also, like, some players come out after their career and are like, I smoked so much weed, and it didn't seem like they did. But they were a great player, and nobody ever doubted their work ethic or the perception of them and all that kind of stuff.
One of the greatest players of all time, Kevin Durant, is a very frequent possible.
I don't think, like, Brandon, there's aesthetic stuff that people are leaning into, but I think indexing on that is a mistake. Like, I really do. I know, like, there was like the Slim Reefer stuff. I'll say right now, I guarantee Brandon won't appreciate that as a nickname. You know what I mean? Yeah. And like, I guess it's funny, whatever. Like, if you want to buy into that stuff, but yeah, like that perception is not earned on Brandon's on his end of things, and so it's like, just especially for myself and S, like, these are not. These are not important topics. I'll just say, if anybody, I will never talk about this again. It's just like, and I'll say for people who are projecting that, it's like, how we don't even know, dude. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I know some Raptors players that you guys don't know that have been Raptors in the past that were heavy smokers, but you guys didn't know and you never would have guessed. And then Brandon, you think just because of, how it looks, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. Who knows though, dude, right? I don't even know Brandon. I ain't met the man yet, but yeah. it is what it is, man.
I think, you know what, to add to that point, anytime you want to get into the parasocial dynamics of fans and players, just like always revert back to, you don't know these people.
Nope.
You don't know these people.
You and I meet these people,
and we still
talk
don't
to
know
these people consistently, and we don't know these
we
people.
still don't know these people. Yeah, that's true.
You and I could have a player's number, go back and forth every once in a while, and we still don't know these people.
Don't know these people.
It's very hard to know somebody.
Yep.
You know?
Yep. Totally.
You and I, S and Samson.
Yeah,
we're good friends.
Samson doesn't know me.
I don't know S. I wish I did though. Jeez. To know somebody.
To yearn.
To yearn. Is anything else we need to talk about?
Let's see.
I guess Blake was right. Yeah, good for him.
Yeah, shout out.
He's usually right about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Brandon Ingram,
Brandon Ingram, Toronto
for the
Raptor.
foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to get buckets. Maybe not that many this year. He might not be playing that much.
Before we leave, actually, that's what I was going to ask you. He plays this year or does not play this year, knowing now he's locked up long term? Let's see. How do you feel?
He's going to play in March.
He's going to play in March.
I don't think this changed. I think that they discussed it, and he's going to play in March, and that's what it's going to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think he's going to play March all the way through April and play every game. I think he's going to play between like 10 to 13 games, if I had to guess.
Interesting.
What do you think?
I think let's
lay it on the line. One of us can be right. One of us can be wrong.
I think he'll play in the games where the Raptors guaranteed will win, regardless of Brandon Ingram playing or not.
What game is that, dude?
Washington and Utah are guaranteed wins. The Raptors could put out Jacoby Walter and Ochai Agbaji and Jamal Shed and Jonathan Mobo as their starting lineup, and probably would have a decent chance of beating the Washington Wizards and the Utah Jazz. So I think he will play in those games, and it'll be a good playground for them to figure things out with. How do you agree with that? Maybe that's just me being conspiracy theory takeist here a little bit, but I think he'll play in the games where the Raptors believe they will struggle to lose.
Because like that would be like he's playing 2 games here, sitting 3 games, playing 3. Like I don't think that makes sense. RR has a great over under 15 games from YouTube. Pick a side. I'm
going under. Yeah, I'm going under.
Okay, so there we go. 15 is pretty high. I think the more interesting one would have been like maybe let's do 11. Let's improve upon this. Although RR, I love your suggestion. I say over 11.
I'm still going under. I'm gonna say he plays 10 games is the exact number. Let's go. 10 games. Yeah.
All right. And I saw people talk about Jacoby in chat. I'm also working on a Jacoby piece because he's been really fun lately. So stay tuned for that. And this YouTube channel operates as a bit of a funnel to the website, raptorsrepublic.com. The most in-depth coverage, analysis of gameplay covering the Raptors. Full stop. Sportsnet, they got us on some of the narrative stuff. They get more exposure to some of the players. They get to write different type of stuff, but they don't come close on the analysis. No website comes remotely close. We've got it made. You can go there, read great pieces. Go read Lewis's big piece on how Scotty and Brandon will fit together. Go read my piece on how the Brandon acquisition impacts Emmanuel quickly going forward. All that good stuff. And anything you want to plug before we get out of here? And I won't police it. I don't
want to plug anything. Devon Landry said, question, who wins 1-on-1 to 21, Samson or S? We don't need to talk about all that, man.
Listen.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to come out and say I would beat the hell out of you.
I'll say this, dude.
Shout out to Curly. Shout out to Key.
The Raptors media game is February 24th, I believe.
Oh, right.
However, you guys can go into every single live. You can go into Will's live stream if he'll answer. You can go to anybody. It's been talked about on the Raptor show. I'm nice, dude. And nobody will say I'm not nice.
No,
dude.
You're right. You are nice. You are nice. Look, it is objective that he is a nice basketball player. He's good,
nice
man.
At ball, dude.
Yeah. Hey, but that commercial, Gooper just said I seen S in that commercial. That commercial is not representative of my basketball skills. All right, I can do a little bit, some. You know what I mean?
No, S is a good
Oh,
basketball player. He plays
yeah.
basketball, dude.
Yeah,
I'm
bro.
just nice, dude. All right. That feels like a place to do it, right?
Yeah.
Papa in chat says, was PJ Tucker waived? Not that I've seen, but
Yeah,
also
unless it
Bobby
happened
said
right
don't
now.
expect them to come north of the border, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's what it is. All right. That feels like a podcast. 700 people in here. If you haven't liked the video, make sure to do so. If you have liked it, leave a comment afterwards saying that you like the show, or tell us if we're wrong about something. You know, there's a couple people in chat I see show up over and over. They like to call us dumb. It doesn't hurt our feelings. So just leave a comment afterwards. It's engagement. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. From myself and Esfandiar Baraheni, the hype man host for the Raptors 905, the co-host of the NBA Daily podcast at The Athletic, the sportscasting writer, the Raptors Republic producer, video maker, editor, everything. The guy who does a million different things and does them all at a really high quality. Thank you so much for tuning in. Here we go, everybody. We'll see you.
Appreciate it.
Blessed day. All right. Bye-bye.